How do you compete? You compete with intelligence because intelligence is cheaper, is more efficient, is optimized. 90% of the AI company fail because they fail to integrate. We are not ready to have AI agents that do from A to Z everything. This is like a recipe for disaster. We need always the human check that verifies, hey, this makes sense.
Is AI the secret sauce that will allow the West to deglobalize supply chains and reindustrialize? Hello and welcome to TechFirst. My name is John Koetsier. One of the biggest global stories of the last year has been a battle to reorient global production and trade. And while, let's be honest, the methods have been pretty much a complete shit show in the US, and tariffs may not be the right answer, and certainly going up and down, probably not the right thing on off. It's arguably important, however, for large trading blocks to have some control over their means of production. Could AI be the key to making it happen? Well, a new generation of engineers is doing that right now in Europe with a layer of AI agents to coordinate, optimize manufacturing, even with legacy machines. They're already boosting production by 20%, dropping downtime by 30%, and they just raised a $4.5 million pre-seed round to make it even better. The company is Forgis, and to chat, we have the CEO, Federico Martelli. Welcome, Federico.
Thanks for the intro. Happy to be here.
Super pumped to have you. Thanks for joining. Let's dive right in. You said that intelligence is the next geopolitical frontier. What do you mean?
It is difficult to compete with Asia on other stuff, right? So like they have mass we don't have in Europe because we're fragmented. The US still, it doesn't have the same mass of India or China. Like the US especially did a pivot. They stopped focusing on becoming the best in all technologies. They went all in on AI, right? And you see that in Silicon Valley startups, YC startups. So what they are doing is betting everything on AI because who wins the general AGI race is going to win most of the markets, also in manufacturing.
Interesting. You're also applying that to machinery, however, because you're actually applying AI and AI agents to existing manufacturing machinery, perhaps new machinery as well. Talk about that.
Yes, the new machinery is much easier, of course, right? Because they are much more technologically advanced. However, legacy is where you have to focus if you want to build a profitable business in manufacturing. You know that the last 30 years, 40 years, there was a offshoring trend to East, and most of the production went to East. In China, especially, is highly automated. Same for Japan. They own 70% of the robotics market, just Japan, for instance. So you see, they understand that that's their thing, because they dominate, right? They have, I think, 40% of the production is coming from there. What we have to do is like bring it back and compete. How do we compete? You compete with intelligence because intelligence is cheaper, is more efficient, is optimized.
What's that look like on old machinery that it probably doesn't access the Wi-Fi?
Exactly. Indeed, like you have two problems, as you said, right? One is an integration problem and then is intelligence. And you cannot solve the same thing with the same solution. So first of all, you need to have a integration layer. Something that cross machine, cross brands, cross application is capable of integrated with all machines and extract the data because intelligence is data. And then you need a second layer that just adds vertical of intelligence to reduce downtime or to have flexible automation. So these are the two problems we're solving.
So you've already achieved some pretty significant results. I mentioned them up top, right? You're reducing downtime 30%, you boost production 20%. There was some other stat that you had in the prep materials as well.
Yeah.
How's that happening?
So like, first of all, like one of the mistakes when you think about manufacturing is that everything is so cutting edge, everything is so advanced. It's not, it's super behind. So really, a slight improvement or adding some technology makes a huge difference because we have outdated system there. So that's how we were immediately able to achieve these metrics after 6 months of starting, 3 months full time. And then like the more we integrate, the more we improve our product, we can achieve.
So is that primarily found in efficiencies of making sure material is where it needs to be, making sure that you've got just-in-time manufacturing on so that everything comes together at the end? Is it mostly internal on a single factory?
Yes. So like as I told you, like first of all, we have a disintegration layer. Now after that, after we are integrated in a factory, we start adding verticals. One of the vertical is reconfiguration, fast reconfiguration, so flexible automation, robotics. And this is very helpful for low volume IMX, so companies that have low batch of production and frequent changes. This is one of the vertical when you can add intelligence and it's useful. Another one is mass production, right? So mass production when you produce mass of products. And what we do in that case is identifying specifically with Edge AI where is the problem, what sensor, in what drive was the cause of the downtime, right? And then after that, we explain to the operator, look, you should do this, that, and that.
So you kind of need a deep understanding of manufacturing, not just AI. You must have some engineers who have actually worked in that scenario already.
Yes, we do. And this is a very smart question. Indeed, we have a model that's similar to Palantir. So first we integrate. So we take 3 to 6 months to be in the factory, understand everything of the process, the logic. This is super important. 90% of the company, AI company, fail because they fail to integrate. They fail to understand what are the pain points, right? And then they die before even scaling in the company. After
Imagine that you're diagnosing and then you're prescribing.
Exactly. Then we have a recording license model where we sell like our verticals, right? We add verticals of intelligence, as I said. Yes, and that's the model. That the only thing that makes sense in manufacturing. We have a huge system of machines.
Yeah. So you raised $4.5 million. I saw on your LinkedIn, I think you did it in like a day or something like that. It was kind of insane.
Yes.
Crazy. I guess that speaks to a couple different things. One, probably you built something real and it's not just napkin and people back of the napkin scrawls and people see that. Two, you're hitting a nerve in an area where it's important, it matters, it's critical to do something. And three, you must have a great network. I noticed you had some people from Arduino, all that stuff. Talk about that scenario.
Yes. So there were two things that led us to this round. So first of all, we had two term sheets already on the table before, and they had a deadline, right? So having a deadline is helpful for all the other VCs to jump in or not jump in, right? We have a deadline, no? And we got 5 term sheets, 3 from the US and 2 from Europe. And then Redalpine was the best fit. And they really understood the manufacturing market. So this was one of the things. Massimo Banzi, the founder of Arduino, that just was sold now to Qualcomm, he jumped to the very beginning. He was with us from the very first day. We didn't know him. We just pinged him on LinkedIn. He reached out to us, he answered. And he said, look, let's work. We spoke, was a fit. He really liked the fact that we understand the industry a lot. We all come from there. I did consulting. All my projects were in manufacturing. Camilla worked in entire value chain. Rick did the research on that. And we were speaking the same language. And that was why he was with us from the very beginning.
Cool. In a former life, I had some connection with lean manufacturing, the Toyota production system and stuff like that. Does that fit into anything that you guys do?
Yes, lean manufacturing is what we are doing now, like optimizing it, make it very efficient, right? That's what we do.
Interesting, cool. And that actually involves the people running the machines in the process. Is that part of what you do as well?
Yeah, this is a smart question. We had at the very beginning a system that was completely replacing. And first of all, you need people to check because this software runs on real hardware, so it can damage the surrounding. You don't have to have everything independently with AI agents. The risk is that you pull chaos and no one knows how to fix it, right? And second, internally in the company, there was a lot of pushback. So we changed that quite immediately, and we start integrating the operator in the system. Now we just supercharge the operator and the engineer to make the work better and more efficient and have the tools to do it better.
It's super interesting because I've gone through some of those lean manufacturing sessions and it's a week-long session. People actually involved in the process are part of re-engineering the process. You look at the upstream inputs, you look at the downstream outputs, you look at customers of every different process, and then you optimize everything, whether that's positioning in the factory, whether that's pre-positioning material or whatever the case might be. And the real key there is that the people who have to run the process after, they're involved in the decision making about how to change the process. They're invested. It's a huge thing. It's really, really important. So I want to get a bit of a bigger picture here a second. So you're doing some very cool stuff. It's going to be incredible because you're adding a data layer, a real-time data layer, which the lean manufacturing people never had. And they've got Kanban, they've got all kinds of paper.
Excel sheets.
Yes, exactly, all that stuff. They don't have all the real-time data, so that's very, very cool. And you're adding real-time intelligence too. So if things change, then you can adapt really, really quickly. That's huge also. Now, bigger picture, what do you want to achieve, let's say on a Europe scale, not just a factory scale?
Yes. So like the macro achievement that they want to have is being able to bring production back from the East to US and Europe and Canada. So to their domestic culture, right, where it was born. And here we have, first of all, a sustainability impact because you don't have transportation around the world. You produce and you sell. It is an advantage, no? Production capabilities are a geopolitical asset, very strategic, especially now, you know, how is the war now. And second, it's very important because we have the largest US and Europe at the moment output markets, no? So we buy, we consume the most, right? So it's fair that we produce and we sell, right? So this is what you want to achieve. We want to achieve that by making industrial automation and manufacturing efficient and optimized. So, and also very flexible. That's also very important, right? So that you reduce wastage, for instance. So you receive an order, a flow of orders, and then the system adapts to it, and then you produce, right? And then you receive a different volume, and again. So everything is connected with this layer, right?
Yeah, yeah, very, very cool. So there's huge challenges with that, as you know, right?
Yes.
And those challenges aren't just in a factory and wiring up a factory for intelligence and data collection and automation and all those other things and agents. It's beyond that because you need an ecosystem for manufacturing, right? You're building, I don't know, a lamp. And you need bulbs and you need a controller and you need a little chip. You need a Wi-Fi chip or a Bluetooth chip because you're making it smart, right? And all those bits and pieces, that adds up to an ecosystem, which if you look in China, has an incredibly dense ecosystem. And you can put all these things together with that piece, and that one's made 2 kilometers away. That one's made half a kilometer away. This one is made 5 kilometers. This one is right next door.
Right,
and boom, there you go. And you don't have that necessarily in either the US or Europe. How do you solve that problem?
Yeah, I completely agree. I see the point, right? If you see San Francisco is the same for startups, right? So there you have like a Silicon Valley for manufacturers, right? An ecosystem, right? And I completely agree. So first of all, we had that ecosystem. Let's touch on this, right? 50 years ago, Germany was one of the, if not the country with more manufacturing, no? Same Italy now. We lost everything, but yes, we had a lot. So we had that, right? So it's possible to rebuild it. And so we need to focus on the reason why we moved it out, right? And was cost efficiency. I think that if we can really make it more convenient to have production at home than outside, most of the company would prefer to have it inside than outside, right? And then once there is this trend, maybe with the EU or the US already is pushing in this direction, starting moving production back, then the ecosystem can be rebuilt. At the beginning, it's going to be an effort, but eventually, when everything is going to be produced in Europe or like industry by industry, you will have this efficient tool here. There's no other way.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to start, right? There has to be a beginning and you need to build ecosystem and you probably need to go industry by industry because it's a little different ecosystem every time. But arguably, it's a matter of national security, international security, to be able to control and own at least significant parts of critical infrastructure, right? We saw that during COVID, where countries would start hoarding things that they thought that they really needed in a pandemic, right? And that can happen in times of war as well, other things like that. Oh, we already saw things with like rare earths, and China put a massive export ban on it, and then just reverse that, of course, right? So this is
there are industries where we are already dominating, right? There are industries
What's
like
that? Say again?
There are industries where we already have everything in house, right? The defense, for instance, we didn't offshore that, so those are starting.
Okay.
Right?
Good.
Cars, like Volkswagen producing Poland, right? So there are cases.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? It's interesting because the narrative, of course, is that everything's made in China. It's not really true. There's a lot that's being made in the West in a lot of different places. And then if the attitude changes as well and the effort changes, I think that there's some value there. Excellent. Very, very cool. So you've got your digital engineers. They're running in a factory. Tell us what they're doing on a regular basis. Are they controlling machinery? Are they providing inputs for people to control machinery? Is it a mix of both?
Yes. So just to go a bit back, we need to focus on all the components, right? So all the hardware components have their own platform. And the incentive from the house that was producing those components was to keep this platform closed. So you cannot switch between different robots, for instance, right? So what we had to do with our digital engineers was to integrate or through an API. Some brands can do that, Beko, for instance, or through their user interface. So we have digital engineers that, like human, use the user interface of the platform, right? And that's a workaround, right? And then
Yes.
we use their platform, their native platform, and that's how we integrate, right? Or
Okay.
in some cases. So that's how the integration happens. We extract data, we extract information, and those information we use it for the vertical of intelligence. So that's how we work. And real time. We run real time. Here we extract data, but for critical choices, we always have the operator, as we spoke before, because we want to have a human check. We are not ready to have AI agents that do from A to Z everything. This is like a recipe for disaster. We need always the human check that verifies, hey, this makes sense. Thanks you for telling me this, right? And we have expertise, so we can do it. We just are much faster in get the human realizing, that they have to change or put oil to the engine, right?
Yeah. Makes sense. Cool. Okay. You raised $4.5 million as a pre-seed round. It's not a small round if it's a pre-seed round, right? I mean,
Yes.
I got to reorient myself now because I'm hearing about these $10 million pre-seeds and 4 million pre-seeds. And then the seed round is like 30 million or something like that. And I'm going like, whoa, something changed here. Anyways, you raised the cash. What are you going to do with it?
Yes, we raised so early because we started really a few months ago. So it was like, it was a pre-seed. We have the team, we have the idea, we have a bit of technology from ETH that we developed during our studies. And yes, so that's why it is a pre-seed. But yes, now the plan is to focus on three levels, right? At the end of the day, it's always the same, but it's sales, product, and tech. So in this order. So first you sell and you get into a factory, and then you start developing the product specifically, like with some adjustment for the client. The tech is the same, right? But the adjustment you need to do because the application is different, the machines are different. So you integrate specifically for the client, and once you run, then you can add the vertical intelligence. And you have the tech that is cross factories, but the integration is to happen. So that's what we are doing. We are focusing. We have 1,400 clients. So we are doing pretty well. And now we just need to start the POC, some of the POCs new year, and with small factories we already started.
Cool. It strikes me as interesting, the stack that you mentioned and the order that you mentioned in, because in the past, people would have started the opposite. They would start with the tech, they would have gone to a product, then they would have gone to sales. You're going to sales, hey, does somebody want this thing? Okay, then I'll make the product. Okay, I have some of the tech, I'll build some of the tech.
Yes, that's learning in the hard way. Like it's always like that, because it's so easy to think that you should first do the tech, then the tech. It should be there, right? The product first, right? This is wrong because we saw that there is so much different way that operators work in a factory. An operator from Volkswagen is different from one from another company. So that's why we really adjusted.
Appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and best of luck.
Thank you very much. It was nice to be here.